Alright. Hello everybody. Gotta make sure my mic is turned up. Hold on. There we go. Should be pretty high up now. Bit of an echo today. There we go. I don't know if that fixed it. Yeah, that's better. Alright. Oh. Oh, we don't have... There we go. There I am. I don't know why it's not doing what it's supposed to, but that's okay. I don't know where. Ah, there we go. We're fixed now. Alright. Troubleshooting. Wasn't doing that earlier, but is what it is. Alright. Hello, everybody. So if you haven't attended Mini Rive before, or the Minicast Rive, all I do is I discuss things that have happened in the league recently that I think are a big enough deal that we need to discuss them. So whether that be rule changes, ownership changes, in this case the trade deadline, because a lot happened, or just giving a broadened outlook on everything that's going on around the league. And yeah, as I said, today's episode will be focusing on the trade deadline transactions. We'll review the league standings because there's some big news there. I will discuss my top 10 draft prospects. And then I have an announcement about a logo tournament. And I'll explain how that works because it's something that's just going to be for fun. And I'm hoping that people enjoy it. Hoping. I can't say for sure. But. Alright. So, starting right into the trade deadline, anybody who's been living under a rock might not be aware, but the Great One Hockey League's trade deadline was last night at 9 p.m. And in all the years I've been in this league, so since 2022, the trade deadline has never been a major event. It's actually kind of been a sad event where like one trade happens. Usually all the real trading happens at the draft. However, this year, and we'll have to check with Doug, but I'm pretty sure we had the most trades I have ever seen at a trade deadline, which is crazy. So diving right into it, you're going to see Hartford's logo a lot on my little whiteboard here because they went crazy. Lack of better words. Like, Hartford's new owner decided that he wanted to break the record for most trades by a team at the trade deadline. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes, trying to remember who his owner is. I don't know why I can't remember his name. I did some deals with him. Oh, Trevor. Trevor has been an owner before. He was actually Trev drafted me back when I played for the Florida Challengers and then for Miami. So Trev and me do go a bit back. I'm sure he doesn't remember me, but that's okay. But he was always huge on transactions and sending his team in the right direction, and he definitely did this deadline. We're going to start with Copenhagen and the Glasgow trade. So Copenhagen received a conditional season 14 first. The condition out announced in the transaction page, but I have access, so I'm going to tell you them, even if I'm not supposed to. That's the neat part. So Copenhagen will receive the highest of the two firsts that Glasgow has. So whatever one ends up being higher for Copenhagen, that's a pickup. In return, Glasgow, who's in a pretty good playoff spot, their team's in a pretty good spot. I don't really think there was a need for them to have their first this season. Will have a first, a third, and a conditional second, which I don't think I wrote down that one's condition. My apologies. Should have, but I did not. Jacksonville went out and received affiliate Mathis Citron. He's just a 57 overall. I doubt he'll be called up anytime soon. Or he will be, and that won't surprise me. And Hartford just received a season 14 second and a conditional season 15 second. So Jack's option of season 15 second to season 16 second if Citron's not promoted before the season 15 draft. So they're going to try to keep him down, most likely. Alright, probably the biggest trade is this one here. It was the only team trade that involved more than two teams. And there was a lot. So, Hartford, of course, being involved in this one as well, because as I said, Trev wanted that record. Trev was doing everything himself, and he was just good with that. However, Hartford would go out and acquire Josh Young Jr., who's a 65 overall, 56 right defenseman, and Boogie Warden, who's an 89-81 center, can also play on the wing. So that move is more of a strengthen the depth for Hartford. Both these players will probably be around a while. So if Hartford wants to push in the offseason for playoffs next year, that was a smart pickup. Florence, it looked like they were trying to get some cap dumps done. So, by the way, Boogie Warren and Josh Young both came from the Firebirds. The Firebirds got Just In Case from Hartford, 71-66. As I said, it seemed more like they were trying to dump off some cap than anything else. And then Neil Selly, 96-95 from Sydney, which then brought their cap back up. So that was interesting. He's, of course, replacing Boogie Warren. And then Sydney also got Nick Samson, who's an 81 cap hit, but 88 overall. He's not a huge pickup from Sydney. Sydney's way out of the playoffs. This seems more like a future piece, kind of the same as Boogie Warren, but not a bad one to have. What they really got out of this trade, that's important, and I have highlighting here, is that season 14 first round pick. The draft is not that deep. And because the draft is not that deep, every single pick is going to be extremely important. Alright. So, the next trade was again Hartford. So, Hartford's had 3 of the first 4 trades. They would go get Tom Krieg, who, as I've written here, that player is the commissioner's player. He's never played on a team other than Alaska. That's huge. He's left Alaska, abandoned his chance at a cup, and is now a member of Hartford, as well as a season 14 first and a season 14 third. And what did Alaska get? Alaska got a little bit younger. I have some interesting thoughts about this that we'll talk about later on. Mainly when we get to the Portland Alaska trade. Because Alaska getting younger here with Richard Riddlewood and Bowdoin Pasternak Jr. doesn't seem like they're pushing for a playoff. And that's interesting to me based off some of the moves Alaska made later on. Alaska's another one with a brand new owner, first time owner. So it's possible he's just getting scammed left, right, and center. Chris Walker. But I would say this trade was a pretty good one. It is surprising when a commish gets traded because all of the commissions in the past have been owners of a team. So it hasn't happened before. as far as I know. And then the season 15 Hartford first. That's an interesting thing to move. However, I don't think it's a bad idea to move it because I think Hartford's looking to push into the playoffs next season. Well, owners can't be moved. Owners have to stay on their team. So they never get moved. The rules state that all owners have to remain on their team, which I disagree with. I've been vocal about disagreeing with it. I think it takes the player's experience away from the owner. Like, looking at Parker Minion, probably one of the best players on Portland, he will not get a cup. He's retiring at the end of next season, but I cannot move him. And I disagree with that in so many ways. Everyone gets hate at first when they're winning, by the way. It's normal. Hate's normal. I can promise you every trade I made wasn't great. In fact, this season I went and undid some trades because I thought they were so bad. So, it's okay. Speaking of trades that I did, so this is the first trade by Portland that we're going to see at the deadline. So, Portland received Swugstern, 62.56, a season 14 Flint Firebird second, and a season 15 Honolulu conditional pick. So, if Norman, who is a 96.83 defender, re-signs with Honolulu, then I will get a first instead of a second. And we retain 50% of the cap, which was just done as a formality. I think, if I remember correctly, the Trops needed 4 overall retained, and I can't do anything less than half. Honestly speaking, this is not a good trade from Portland. This is an example of when you make a move that you know isn't going to be that great without context. So what's the context? Norman asked to be traded. He said he was either walking in free agency or he wanted to go to a contender. A league about player experience, as an owner, I believe it's my responsibility to make sure that players' goals are met. So I sent Norman to probably the favorite for the cup. That way he can go out and get his cup, and I got something back instead of him just walking in free agency for nothing. So it's a win for both teams, even if I probably could have got more for Norman, especially at that cap hit, at his age. He's young, and has a future. Hartford's going to appear again. So, St. Paul will receive Out with her, 81.75 left winger. He's not going to do much in the league right now. Even 80s, 85s are basically useless with the current setup of the league, which is why that there's hints of changes. I'm sure you've all seen the owners hinting at changes. Hopefully those changes get approved by everybody. But when everybody in the league is 99 overall, when you're an 81 overall, the equivalence of an 18 overall difference is huge. So that's where you're going to see people be like, oh, an 81 isn't that great. Hartford got Kobe's Rizamana, who I think was under 80, as well as a conditional second. Yes. The Ghost Tag Demon wasn't great. It's not bad, though. The thing about the Ghost Tag is they kind of just sit there. They don't move, they don't go anywhere. So when they're just sitting there, the inactivity kind of sucks, but at the certain overall, it really isn't that bad. And then if Rafael does not resign, it becomes a season 16 second instead of a season 15 second. That's just a small piece movement. These are the trades that usually go under the radar because they're not usually that big. Nobody talks about them. Portland's trade with Norman is probably the second biggest one as far as overalls go so far. Especially with who was on that receiving end. And also that it took like 2 weeks to make happen. Alright. So for trade deadline transactions, the condition was not quite written down for this one, or I always couldn't find it. So I do not know what the condition is, which means you don't get to know what the condition is unless you're an owner, so I'm sorry. Hartford received Redwin Gross, 71.59 affiliate. Honolulu receives Cramsey Ramsey and a season 14 conditional pick. This is another example of Hartford going out and acquiring a piece that they won't really have a use of now, give them 2 to 3 seasons. They'll be extremely helpful. And then the other trade on this page is Portland and Alaska. So Portland received Lucas Shanahan, who's a 74-63, season 15 AAW second, and Alaska received Wes Reeves. So here's the thing for Honolulu. Holding on to your affiliates won't really do you any good anymore. Obviously they might get hit by I need to stop saying wow. They might get hit by the cap and then want to bring up those affiliates. However, the league isn't set up for successful affiliates if they just stay in the minors. They need to come up to get that content, to get more time on the ice. And Honolulu's picking up depth pieces or high-scoring pieces in return for these affiliates. So Honolulu is very much in a win-now mode. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with their cap in the offseason. But these are good moves, in my opinion, because these are guys that are just going to sit in the minors for years until they walked in free agency. Especially since there is that new rule in the league. I think it's at the age 24 or it's 25. If a player is still an affiliate, they are forced in the pro free agency. So the thing about that means if you are trying to bank your affiliates so that they're really good, and that's affecting the lower teams from getting successful, you can't do that anymore. You can't bank affiliates. The league is pushing them up now. So that's going to be a huge challenge, and that makes moving affiliates actually a really good idea. And then, of course, the Wes Reeves trade, that's an interesting one in the sense where this is what I meant earlier, where Alaska seems to be half in a... Thank you, Doug. It's 23 if not under contract. Thank you, Doug. So... Hold on. There's more trades. We haven't got through them all. Alaska will receive Wes Reeves. Portland received Lucas Shanahan. That 15th second is huge. Here it is. Here's the trade you mentioned. I didn't forget about it. St. Paul's and Alaska. This is interesting in so many senses because I've been struggling. There's a reason I put this one last. I don't understand what the thought process was for St. Paul. This is a steal from Alaska, and I'm going to talk about why. So we're going to ignore the picks for a second. We're just going to look at the players. 90, 92, 94, 94. Yes, Alaska's cap takes a hit. 64, 83, 94, 87. Excuse me. But this 87 isn't expiring until season 15. So he's going to be like a 97 by the time his contract's up. And if they re-signed either of these guys for 2-1 seasons, they were going to have a much higher cap hit. So immediately, the value of that, in my opinion, should have taken away one of those seconds. And then Chris Morrison probably won't be back with Alaska. That's where I'm kind of like... Because that's all going to depend on where the cap's at, where Alaska's feeling, what Alaska's looking at. But what's really interesting about this trade, at least to me, St. Paul got 2 rentals that if they don't re-sign, that was going to be completely useless for them, and they lost picks. If these guys were on longer contracts, the picks make sense to me, but they're not. So those picks moving, as well as a long-term contract, that's a win for Alaska. This trade is the definition of an Alaska win. For anybody wondering the player positions, they are all forwards moved in this trade. They're all pro forwards. So they're just basically moving lines. So very interesting. Great job by the new owner in Alaska. He might have got scammed in the Portland trade with Wes Reeves. But when you combined all those trades together, especially after picking up these seconds that were like completely unnecessary for Alaska, so when you combined all those trades together, the value of Wes Reeves goes way up because Alaska's in win now mode. So this is where, as an owner, you kind of have to piece all your trades together. I know some owners write down every trade they do, and that's why. And then there was only one minor transaction. And it's Brad Richard, who I think is the highest overall in the minors. This is kind of what we're talking about banking affiliates. There's no reason an 84 should be in the minors when there's 62s playing in the pros right now. I'm not going to touch on that more, because I'll be here all day. But Saskatoon gets scoring depth. Halifax gets the scorer. It is a rental for Halifax, that's true. But the honest truth is it could be rental for Saskatoon. That's where the minors is at right now. There's so many pro spots opening, so many people have been leaving the league left, right, and center, that these guys may be drafted and called up as quickly as Brad Bochette, if not faster. Which is why I'm shocked that he's still down in the 84. That's it. That was it for all transactions at this trade deadline. Hold on. So that would make... It's going to do the animation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9... And we're going to count the minor one, 10. 10 transactions at this trade deadline. That's probably the best we've seen in quite a while. That's an average of 2 trades per sim day. That was some great stuff. Very nicely done. And quite enjoyable to watch. Great trade deadline, everybody. Had some scams, had some mares, and had some really good trades. Alright, league standings. You're going to notice that 4 teams have a yellow happy face. Those 4 teams have clinched their playoffs. You're going to notice that none of the bottom feeders have a little red X beside them. That's because nobody is mathematically out of the picture yet. So, with that in mind, as I said, there wasn't much change at all. I think Turk and the Firebirds switched. Looking at my written down numbers, Portland is the second worst team in the league, right behind Hartford. Both of them are probably mathematically out by the end of the week. Sydney will probably be mathematically out by the end of the week. Jacksonville should clinch here. Miami should give a clinch soon. Columbus and Detroit are tied, and they have 27 wins. So if 27 wins is a clinch over in this conference, then Glasgow should clinch soon. Tennessee, I think, has won the division. As well as Copenhagen and Glasgow can switch. Detroit and Columbus can switch. Honolulu has won their division. 33 wins is insane, and I don't think they'll be caught up. Jacksonville, Miami, and Abercue, all of them could switch. Sydney cannot make it above any of those guys. If they're going to make it, they'd knock out... I think they'd have to knock out Calgary. That looks like the only one that they could maybe knock out. And Sydney's the closest. With Sydney having 10 and Calgary having 12 wins. So that's the only one Sydney could knock out. The St. Paul Stags could also knock out Calgary. So that's also going to be the other interesting one. Other than that, playoffs are probably set in stone. Boston and Brooklyn, I don't think will make it. Hartford's probably done for this season. Yeah, so if they have a smiley face beside them, that's going to be your playoffs. Interesting stuff, I know. Alright, a lot of people probably excited here. We got the top 10 draft prospects currently. And this is going off the roster sheet, so I really hope the roster sheet's up to date. Oh, I just got way brighter all of a sudden. The curtains are going crazy. Alright, so the draft class has a total of 27 picks. I don't know if you can tell by my face, but that's not good. We have 24 teams, if my math is correct. 27 picks right now. We have 1 round. Now, that's not something to panic about yet. Because... Drop my pen. Everything... What's the word I'm looking for? Everything can switch. More people can join the league. More people can leave the league. So nothing here is really set in stone. So don't panic if 27 sounds low. Okay, so draft sheet is way off. So my top 10 draft prospects is way off. Thank you, Doug. Doug, do you have a number of how many draft prospects we have roughly? Do we have 2 rounds? I'll give him a second to answer. Hopefully we have 2 rounds, because I did a lot of acquiring of seconds. So technically we don't. So with that in mind, this is probably not correct then. Because I was going off the draft sheet. So if the draft sheet's not up to date, we're just going to skip this piece. Which is my apologies. I should have did my homework. But that's okay. So that's just going to bring the stream to an end sooner. The final announcement I have is Minion Live 3. Minion Live 3 will be dropping with a logo tournament. So, I'm actually very excited for this, because this is all just my views on things. I'm not asking the community, so I'm hoping people will come and yell at me in the chat. I encourage everybody to come yell at me in the chat. How it's going to work is every team will be matched up at first against a division, and then against in a bracket. So I don't want to just put like one logo against one logo, because I don't feel like that's entirely correct. I feel like that's kind of unrealistic. So the top 2 logos from each division will make it into a bracket. I think as well I will have to have 2 wild cards to make it a 16-team bracket. And then they will collide against each other based on the overall standings of the logo tournament. So I will discuss each point of why one logo is better than the other. We'll see where I place everything. I will try to avoid bias and not allow Portland to win. And that will probably be next Friday, while I'm on my reading week. So just some extra content for everyone to look forward to. Minion Live 3 will only be focusing on the logo tournament, as well as any rule changes that the league announced. So tune in for that. Other than that, we are going to drop the stream here. That's been Minion Live 2. Much shorter than Minion Live 1, as per people's requests. And thank you all for watching. And we'll see you guys all again for the logo tournament.